when you look at the majority of stores, they're still just focusing on formulas that sell products. And for me, that is where there is really a gap between what retailers are offering and what customers are expecting.
So why are we missing that aspect? I mean, if we're talking about the experience economy as something that was back in the late 90s and we're here now in 2025, what's happened? Why haven't we picked up on this yet?
Welcome back
to another episode of the Innovate On Purpose podcast.
Hosted by Matt Mueller,
best-selling author of The Mindful Innovator and Rethink Retail's top retail expert.
We help retail leaders find clarity so they can grow their businesses purposefully.
We will uncover mindful tips, innovative solutions, and purposeful leadership advice and strategies that you can apply immediately to your retail innovation.
Are you ready to innovate on purpose?
Hey, before we jump into the episode today, I just wanted to say thank you for hitting the play button. You being here fires me up, and I cannot wait to share with you the insights that are going to make a difference in your business. Do me a favor, hit the subscribe button and leave a review so I can reach as many retail leaders as possible. They too need to hear this. Okay, let's do it. Is your store design costing you your customers? That is a question that we are going to dive in today on our episode of Innovate on Purpose. It's a very important topic, something that I connected with viscerally when I was running an innovation team was like the store design, especially in the United States. It felt like it was just so boring and just there. And it really wasn't designed to really help employees or customers, and it has to be costing us something. Well, that's what my thought is, but I felt like we needed somebody on the show today that is a doctor in this. So today we have a doctor in retail design, Dr. Elisa Servais, who is here to talk to us about store design and how we can improve it to make a better employee and customer experience. So Elisa, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me, Matt.
Of course. We had a chance to meet late last year, and just I think we really connected well on the topic of store design. When you think about those stores, yeah, they're absolutely just outdated and aren't really they're not set up to do the job that they should be doing. So I guess before we jump into store design and what it's costing our retailers, just please, can you give us a little bit of background on why our audience should be really listening to every single word that you're saying today? I know I would be.
So I am an interior architect, but I've always worked in retail design. I worked for 12 years in 3 different countries: Belgium, China, Shanghai, and then London in the UK. And then after that, I did 6 years of academic research and teaching. So I think I kind of have this breadth wide scope of experience in retail design that goes both from practice, academia, all over the world, all over different types of roles. And so I think it's really brought me like a unique perspective. So yes, I am a doctor, and I know that sounds funny, but I do consider myself to be quite an expert in the topic.
Yeah, so you should. You have many years of experience with so many different companies and the academia side of it, which is so cool. I really wish when I was going to college, I could have met a doctor of retail design, because it would have served me so well in the future. It's just a really neat topic and something that I think we do need to expand on. Like, retail is one of the biggest industries in the world, yet we don't have courses designed to support it, which is so odd to me.
Well, there are courses, but there is really a gap between academia and practice. The people who are academia kind of tend to stay in academia, and the people in practice don't even really know what's happening in academia, or the language that is used is not that accessible to them. It's something that we've really discussed as part of my PhD, is how do you bridge that gap? And that was really important in my thesis. Yeah. I really wanted to make sure that I did something that was, yes, academic, but for the purpose of practice, if that makes sense.
It does. It totally does. It's just, we need to have that academic piece to the retail side of things.
Definitely.
So like when we think about retail design and its current state, like how would you describe your average retail store as far as like the design?
Well, I think you said it. It's outdated in terms of how people are approaching it. For me, it's really triggering that. So my thesis was around in-store experience and how to design experiential stores, not necessarily experientials in terms of like high experience, but just how do you design an in-store experience, whether it's a convenience store or, like a flagship store, no matter. And one of the key references in that is Pine and Gilmore. I don't know if you know of them, but they wrote an article in 1998, which was called The Experience Economy. And it triggers me that we're 25 years after that, and we're still designing stores that sell products, not experiences.
Mm-hmm.
And in between products and experiences, you should have had service. So what happened to that economy? It should have been, the whole theory is that we went from commodity to products to services to experiences. But when you look at the majority of stores, they're still just focusing on formulas that sell products. And for me, that is where there is really a gap between what retailers are offering and what customers are expecting.
Yeah, it's so true. So why are we missing that aspect? I mean, if we're talking about the experience economy as something that was back in the late 90s and we're here now in 2025, like what's happened? Like, why haven't we picked up on this yet?
My impression is that retailers are stuck a little bit in their organizational processes. So there's a structure that's behind with a certain number of employees, and that is a reality that we have to face. Of course, changing operations, changing ways of approaching something, it triggers a lot of questions in terms of your structure. And so I think there is an awareness of what needs to happen, but then there's a financial reality of, oh dear, how do I put this into place? What is going to be the impact on my employees? And the reality of it is you need a strong leader to be able to manage that and to ensure that it doesn't become all of these sort of little political games within a structure, which, as you and I both know, tends to happen.
Oh, yeah.
So I think that sometimes I've been called as a consultant, as an external consultant. I think you probably have too. And I think the ambition is there and the awareness is there. Whether or not they actually implement the ideas that we share often is an issue because there's the reality of what's happening in the back of house.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Yeah, change is difficult, especially when you're talking about legacy stuff, right? So whether it's technology, whether it's the way that the store is designed, whether it's the training of employees, it's all legacy stuff that is going to cost money to change. And I remember like working with this one retailer, we were designing this new process of how do you take orders from consumers. And what we wound up doing was like, well, we can take orders consumers in a little bit of a different fashion, but we'll need this piece of technology. And to put that piece of technology into the stores would cost, over $1 million to do it. And even though the return on investment of this system would have been like $3 million after the first 2 years, just because the new way that we were doing the service experience was actually going to increase the item count, the transaction count, and also the impulse sales. So we saw that there was the value there. But even though we had the value and say, hey, you're going to make $2 million off the system in a couple of years, it was a $1 million loss to start. And it was something they had to put into stores and they had to train their employees. So it became a point of like, you know what? It's not worth it. It's that's so sad. It's like, it is tough to change those legacy systems.
Yeah, but again, it's short-term thinking. And I think you and I both know that. And especially when you are dealing now with this omni-channel world in which we live, the way that physical stores operate, you can't be considering them in this like silo anymore, which is how retailers still work. We have a marketing team that looks at the overall structure. Okay. And then you have somebody who's going to do the website, somebody who's going to do the mobile stuff, the social media, and then the store. And then I'm having retailer clients still asking me, okay, what's my return on investment per square meter? And I'm going, but that's not the reality anymore because people are going to come in the shop, try something, buy it online. So you're not asking me a fair question when you're asking me for the return on investment of square meters of a physical store, because the conversion is happening on multiple platforms at the same time. So again, I think they are aware of it, but there's still these old habits and these old terminologies, return on investment and strategies and sales per square meter. And you know what I mean? Like I'm still having these questions being asked when you do remind them, but this is not how it works anymore. They do go, yes, I know that. But still, can you tell me? Can you guarantee? Right. And I'm going, okay, guys, but come on, like we're not going to move forward and this is not going to be productive if at some point you don't just stop and think, okay, let's move forward. And how do we move forward? And do we accept, as you said, that loss for the long-term win?
Yeah. And I think you said one word too that really kind of made my eye twitch a little bit, which was silo. Yeah. The silos. They're there, they're real. I know everybody feels them, and we all measure success differently. And, if I'm the marketing team, I'm going to be looking at one particular thing. About operations, I'm looking at another, and not necessarily are those going to meet halfway. Success looks different to everybody. So it's like, from like talking to our leaders that are out there, like, it's so important for us to start to think about, like, what are those KPIs that we have as a company on a top level, that's going to filter into all of the silos, and then hopefully break those silos and get people communicating together. Because to create that store of the future, that store design of the future, it does take, I think, every single department to be involved with that aspect.
Well, it's something that I'm often faced with when I do my first meeting with my clients, because the way I approach my first meeting is quite different from how other retail designers or interior architects approach their meeting, because I'm asking them questions about their omni-channel approach, the strategy at the higher level. What is it that each customers expect in each of your different platforms? So what is the ultimate goal of the physical store compared to the other ones? What makes it unique? Again, the key message is, nowadays, if people want to buy products, they can do it from the comfort of their sofa. What are you going to do in your physical store to make them get up, get out, even if it's raining, because here in Belgium it rains a lot, come to your physical store, versus being, in their sofa watching TV, ordering a product online? You need to think about that. And that means you need to understand the needs and expectations of your customers for each of your different platforms. So I'm asking all of these questions, and I have retailers looking at me, but are you an interior architect really? Because you're asking strategy questions. And I'm going, but if you want me to deliver the most valuable in-store experience that I can deliver for your specific store, in this specific location, for that specific customer, and for your brand, I need to understand the whole story. So it's all about, my approach, I would say, is really more strategy driven, more holistic, and also, as you said, more collaborative. The silos need to go. We need to work together.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like how you talk about industrial design and architecture, but it's so much deeper than that, and it starts off with that strategy. And I think you probably said it 3 or 4 times already, omni-channel. And what is that? What is that e-commerce experience, and how does that align with your physical store? So there's an integration there that I think a lot of retailers are missing, where it's you have an online experience because, well, you just have to, right? But it not necessarily aligns with the in-store because it's probably a different silo. So how do you best integrate your store design with your omni-channel experience or your e-commerce experience? And what should retailers be looking at as the flags, the red flags?
Well, again, I think it's about having at the core a very clear brand identity. You and I both know this. So at the core, what's your why? What is your mission? What is your story? At the end of the day, as an overall brand, what is your story? Okay, now, based on your customer, which platforms are you going to operate on? Because for me, some retailers are actually investing a lot of time on social media, but the whole base, for example, of their brand is back to nature, to, well-being, connectivity. And then I'm going, okay, well, then your customer, your target customer, it's not going to be on social media that they're looking for you. So drop the investment in social media and reinvest that where it matters, which is the physical touch points where they can connect with people. So that's, again, why I think it's really important to have this really clear overall idea, strategy of who are you as a brand? Who is your core customer? Okay, now we have this. Which channels do they expect you to operate on? And for each one, what are their needs and expectations? And once we have this clarity, each one of us can kind of go and work individually because we each know what our purpose is within the overall purpose. Does that make sense? So I think it's really what's missing at the moment is we do have somebody who kind of comes up with an overall thing, but I still feel like some of the links are missing, and that at the end, the brief that is given is still very either incomplete or isn't connected. So I still feel like a lot of the time that I don't have a brand story. I don't have a clear customer expectation for the physical store specifically, or I don't understand how it fits with the other channels. And that is where I come in and I challenge the retailers. And again, as an interior architect, they don't understand why I'm challenging them, but I'm going, guys, I'm just trying to help you in making this the most valuable experience possible. And if that means stepping out of my core expertise to then go and ask the questions that I need to ask, I will do that.
Are there any brands that inspire you as far as like they got their act together? Are any brands out there that you are currently like, wow?
For retail design specifically, Aesop is always an amazing reference for the simple reason that they manage to have a clear brand identity, but every single store is different. And so again, I think this is something that's a direction that most customers want today. It's about being coherent, but not about being same. Cookie cutter is gone. We don't want, the same store everywhere anymore. We want a different experience in every single visit. And so again, I think looking back at the omni-channel, it's the same message. It's you need to be coherent, but each experience that you offer, whether it's in different physical stores or whether it's online and in a physical store, should add something a little bit different. And I feel like Aesop, in terms of retail design specifically, does that really well, because you can walk into an Aesop and you will inevitably recognize it. But every single store is slightly different because they focus a lot on the local aspect. So they will ask a local architect to build, they will take local materials, they will sometimes have a local artist that does a piece of art. In Paris, they have like a painting by a local artist on the ceiling. So it's really unique and yet totally recognizable. And that is so powerful for me.
That is huge. Yeah, when you're able to change elements, but yet still have your brand kind of just breathe in that space, it's so magnificent. Like I've seen like a couple of brands try to do that here in the US by like, just putting the name of the county or the town like in the front where the shopping carts are or wherever. And it's just like, nice try. It's you're local, but it kind of missed the mark. And so what are those other design elements that you can add to it to really just embody that geographic area? Well, I love it too. Like even with e-commerce too, just thinking about like, what are you going to deliver there that's a little bit more different than what your consumers would expect to see there, but still keep the brand alive?
Another brand that might be more well-known and more accessible is Adidas. Adidas does this really well as well, where their stores are very recognizable, but yet in key locations like Berlin, like Paris, they will integrate like certain specific local elements that make you feel, okay, like I'm in Berlin, I'm in Paris, this is a different store. And it's really a smart marketing move when you think about it, because there's then this kind of notion, and it's the same with Aesop, retail designers, we will visit. Every time we go to a capital and we know there's an Aesop, we're going to make a point to go and visit it just because we want to see the store. And I think a lot of fans of brands like it's really a smart move to make such strong localized experiences because it drives customers to visit you as part of a tourist.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it hits on a subconscious level too. I think it's because like we think of brands, like consumers today think of brands as people, right? It's a personality. And we are more likely to connect with people that are like us. That's just the way we are. And so if I live in Berlin, or if I'm a native to that Berlin, and I go into a store that feels like Berlin, all of a sudden that brand now becomes my brand. Even though Adidas didn't start in Berlin.
No.
I connect with Adidas because it's like me. And the same thing happens when Adidas goes to a different town. So I think it's a really great example of a brand that's doing it really well on bringing that geographic piece to life.
And the sense of community, as you mentioned, it's a really big trend that's really important. Yes, you have the brand customer connection, but you also have the customer to customer connection within a retailer's environment. And there are some brands that are very smart at working on this. Vans is also very good at doing that in terms of creating physical environments that have skating ramps, that have art exhibition space. And so again, what it does is that you're losing sales per square meters because it's square meters that we're not selling products on. But what we are doing is we're giving a space for the consumer community, the fans of the brand, to come together and associate with the brand ever more. And trust me that those people will spend more. So again, It's about making that, as you said yourself, that loss at the beginning, which is in your head actually, turns into a massive win in the long run because these people come back because the store becomes a hub. It's not just a place to shop anymore. But by the way, when they come to be in their community, they also shop.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's just a different way of looking at it for sure. Oh, I guess my first, like, well, not my first question, but a question that's kind of coming into my head at the moment is like thinking about when I should call you. Like, so if I was to work with somebody that's going to help me with my retail design, like I'm feeling like there's two different paths here. Like there's one like, hey, I'm building a new store or I'm remodeling my store, help me here and help me with the redesign. But I also feel like there might be like another path where it's like, is there an opportunity to like say do quicker retail design changes to your store that's going to have an immediate impact? Because I think there has to be ways that we can like, hey, let's get the low hanging fruit. We don't have to do a $3 million store redesign, right? Like, so is that possible? And what does that look like?
Of course. I mean, there's really like, if you want the full package is that I'm going to help either a young entrepreneur who's starting and who may not have the full brand story there, just as I could help an existing retailer who kind of has been stuck in their ways of working for so long that they need an external critical thinker to kind of go, okay, I'm going to poke you now about your strategy and all of that. So that's the full package. It starts with the strategy and then it goes really in depth into coming up with a concept that is going to be unique to your brand, your customer, this location, and then putting that full on, whether it's a new location or an existing location. That's the full thing. But indeed, you can just, I mean, for me, I'm sorry, but I am a critical thinker and I know my field. So I can walk into a store and quickly identify, okay, well, even just in terms of logistics or in terms of what I consider retail design logistics, which is flow, why is that put over there? So there is always the quick wins formula, which is considering just people watching. And you and I both know this, customer watching. You simply do customer observations. And without even working on the brand side, just looking at the customer side, you observe how they experience your current shop. And from there, you can pick up some easy solutions that are going to be, as you said, lower impact, lower investment, quicker return. Whether or not it's a successful is another discussion, but you can also decide to do one and then the other. You do the quick wins while you're then working on the stronger, or you do the quick wins as a test to then see if that's efficient, to then turn that into like a longer term process. But it's definitely possible to do quick wins for sure. There's always room for improvement,
Right?
Matt.
Plenty of opportunities out there. And I love how you mentioned too, like we're just people watching and customer watching. And I love, my favorite thing to do is ethnographic research where I'll walk into stores with customers and just let them lead the way. And it's just always an eye-opening experience and something that you really can't do if it's like your store, right? It's like if it's your store and you're walking with that customer, like I'll do that with like store managers or VPs of a brand, and they'll try and put out the excuses of, oh, well, this is why it's like this. And it's like, no, it's like the customer is the expert. Allow them to lead you and just really just let their voice shine here. Because whatever they say, even if it doesn't, make sense to you, it makes sense to them. And they're the ones that are really important here. So it's so important to watch it and take the advice of our consumers. So it's super important there.
Yeah, for me, there's always 3 stakeholders that I feel are important to interview when you're starting to try and dress a portrait of the current context. It's of course the people at the top, but then I want to talk to staff without the people at the top there, because I want to hear the real talk. Okay. And trust me that they know their stuff usually quite well in terms of operations. So for me, yes, customers are good and the best in terms of sharing their experience, but in terms of sharing operational aspects, the staff is the best. And then in terms of strategy, of course, you need to talk to the people at the top. So for me, it's really like ticking those 3 boxes. I want the strategy, I want the operations, and then I want the experience, because they're the ones that I need to deliver for. And that's really something that I feel is becoming harder and harder in today's world, again, because customer expectations have changed so much. And the way that people behave have changed so much. There's a lot of academic research in that shows that customer behavior data is kind of schizophrenic now. You used to be able to work with kind of personas, and we're moving away from personas because we realize that even one person can operate completely differently from one day to the next, based on one need to the next, and things like that. And so it's really, for me, quite interesting to see how do we, as people who need to design for them, manage this sort of blur that we're in. It's
There's
super
there's like a
interesting.
place where the persona does live, but it's also like these jobs to be done, like that you're talking about, right? It's like is the person that's coming in that only has 15 minutes that day, which could be the same person next time coming in that has an hour to kill and is like, what, this is my time to just do my leisure shopping, which is more fun. So there could be two different type of shopping experiences that they're looking for, even though it's the same person.
Yeah.
There's like a
So
blend of like those two different dials you can kind of turn. It's like this a persona, and then there's that job.
exactly. I work with the both. I work with the more personality lifestyle aspect, and then I work with the shopping motivations, expectations aspect. Like what is your job, as you said, within the what is your relationship to the store basically versus who are you? It's quite interesting in terms of managing that customer aspect. But again, there's nothing that beats talking to people and also keeping track of customer trends and societal trends, because I really feel, and I think we've talked about this before, that in retail, we're a little bit behind in terms of acknowledging certain shifts in society. For me, a topic that's quite important at the moment is neurodivergence, and the fact that in retail, in a sense, we're kind of almost going in the opposite direction of what should be happening for these people, because we're creating, and this was the topic of my thesis, creating in-store experiences. And what does that mean? We're working with environments that are looking at sensory design. Wonderful, great, but how much do you want to input in terms of these kind of stimuli? Because for a part of the population that is growing, we're talking 20% that is known. Sometimes this creates overstimulation and the reaction is out. And that is counterproductive then. So again, I think there is something to investigate, and that's something that I'm looking forward to investigating myself more in the future. Is we need to make sure that we design, but we design again consciously of how society is moving. And I think, as always, the message is balance.
Yeah.
Yes, we need to create more experiences, but we need to create balanced experiences.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I have noticed like neurodivergent being a much bigger topic these days, and whether it's retail or outside of retail. Actually, I was just at a hockey game, an NHL game, and they did a really good job of making sure that the neurodivergent population was taken care of, and they had signs up everywhere saying, "Hey, we have neurodivergent kits available for anyone who needs them." So it's interesting that we have to start thinking about that, be able to accommodate that population. So like, what should retail like think about when it comes down to neurodivergent? I'm curious, like, what should we do other than like, tone it down?
It's not about toning it down necessarily. There's different ways that you can do it. I think for me, the main message is about options and breaks. I think those are the two key messages. If you want to create like a full-blown stimulation, yeah, sure, that's fine. Neurodivergents can handle that. They just can't handle it for too long.
Yeah, the whole hour in the store. No.
Exactly. So I think it's about just making sure that either you give options in the shopper journey, in the customer journey, for those people who want or don't want, or it's about, if there are no options, then just making sure that you create those breathing moments, basically. Sector that does really well and that is much further than we are in terms of managing this is exhibition design. Exhibition design manages really well because it's also about like the visitor experience when you think about it. And when you think about like these kind of now immersive exhibitions, which are becoming so popular, they're very good at having like one room where there's a lot going on, and then the following room, or there's like a transition space, but there's always kind of like that moment of, okay, now I can decompress from what I've just lived before I move on to the next one. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And I feel like somehow in retail, we don't seek inspiration enough in that, because we are also all about creating experiences now, but somehow we haven't tapped into the inspiration that we can get from exhibition design. So I think for me, there's also a lesson to be taken there.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's definitely an interesting connection there. We can learn so much from the exhibition space for sure. So when we think about store design and is it costing you customers, like that's the title here. How does one identify if it's costing them customers?
Good question. Well, again, I think you need to stop. There's a few things. You need to stop looking at the results of your physical store on its own. So that would be key takeaway number one, I would say, is, again, consider your omni-channel, your overall sales. Please don't say, oh my goodness, this store isn't doing so well. How are your overall sales doing? And can you prove, or can you find a connection between the physical store and why maybe your online shop is doing better? Because if you can find a connection, then the physical store clearly still has a reason for being. So that would be my first question is, are you sure that your physical store is costing you customers? First of all, do that check. If you do find that it's costing you customers, then it's about understanding, reevaluating, questioning yourself. Am I still relevant as a brand? Am I still unique enough? Do I still stand out enough? Do I still offer something that customers need, want? And if not, then I need to probably question my positioning, my offer, etc. If I am still offering what they need, but they just don't seem to be getting it, then it's about simply revamping your communication strategy. And this is where, again, your physical store can play a crucial role in alignment with your other platforms. So you can, again, identify what does my customer not understand in my message, and how can I use my different platforms to then make sure that he does understand.
Awesome. Yeah. And I know you have like a 54-point inspection.
Yeah. So
I'm not going to make you repeat all of them right now.
As part of my thesis, as I said, I really wanted to make it very practical. So what I identified is there's really this gap in between how we design store experiences at the moment and the customer expectations. Yes, we are trying to design for experience, but most often we don't even ask questions about experience really like at the briefing phase when we're talking to the retailer. So most often we're still designing the same way we were designing before. Who are you as a brand? Who's your customer? What's your offer? And then we're going to start thinking about that experience aspect at like when we're actually past the concept, when we're thinking more in terms of actual physical elements in the store. So somebody will go, let's add a digital screen. We should offer more service. And in terms of the design process, this is really troubling because you've already done a concept and then you're having to add on pieces. And the customer can see that. He can then see that this is just an add-on piece. It's not been thought out as an overall experience. So my research was really trying to understand how can we move this reflection about experience at the forefront, and in the briefing phase, ask specific questions about the topics that contribute to a valuable in-store experience. And there's 5 topics that are key. And then from there, there's specific questions that you need to ask for each: the brand, the customer, the offer and service, the physical store, and then what my research came up with, which is kind of novel, that nobody had pinpointed before, but that we all know of, is what's the unexpected factor? What is the more that you're going to bring at every single visit? So I have questions that I developed, that I researched for each of these 5 different topics that I now ask as part of my briefing. And that way I can go away and design a concept that considers all of the factors that my research has shown can contribute to creating that valuable in-store experience.
I love it. I love all 5 sections, but absolutely love the 5th one. That is beautiful. Just what is that little extra oomph that's going to get you over the top, that's going to make you more competitive? And I'm starting to think of, brands that are doing that right now, where it's just like, here's that extra touch, the final touch that's just, going above and beyond the expectations. So just,
and it
so
can
important.
be, again, it's super interesting to analyze, because you're going to say, well, a convenience store doesn't need to have that. Yes, every store needs to have that. It's just that it depends where you're putting it. For somebody who is task-oriented, they're going to want that more to be maybe more in the product, or a surprise in the pricing, or a surprise in terms of the ease of service, because for them, it's all about convenience, right? So you still need to have this more. You can have a valuable in-store experience that delivers every time to the same, okay, I had this nice experience, I'm expecting this level, and it still delivers. But if you want the most valuable in-store experience, you need to every time deliver above the expectation. And that is very tricky to do. You and I both know that, but it is very possible to do. It's just, again, about having that overall scope of what customers want and expect.
Absolutely. Yeah, that makes total sense. And it's so cool just to kind of think about it in that way. I'm thinking of like Lowe's Foods, which I did some work with quite a few years ago, but like they have a really interesting experience within their stores here in the US and like the North Carolina area and that region, where they just deliver different experiences in the grocery store. They're just designed differently. Like the cake shop, what makes them different is that their cakes are just square. That's their difference maker. And it's like everyone else has round cakes, they have square cakes, and it makes them just that little bit different, unexpected. So it's just that's the kind of.
I love it because, again, as you said, how simple is this? How much money did it cost them to change round tins to square tins? But in terms of the impact in customer mindsets, it's massive. So again, I don't think you need to reinvent the wheel. What you do need to do is ask yourself the right question.
Yeah. Well, Doctor, thank you so much for coming on the show today. It's been an absolute pleasure having you. I think we've learned a lot. And there's a lot to absolutely explore and reflect on. So if I were to challenge every leader that's listening to the podcast today, is to reflect on, is your store costing you customers today? Look at that total business and break it down a little bit differently. Really reflect on that. And then what can you do that's that low-hanging fruit that can take that experience to the next level? So this way it's not just going to transaction, but to experience. So Dr. Elisa, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you for having me, Matt. It was a real pleasure.
Of course.
We have made it to the end of another episode. Thank you for tuning in. A couple of things before you go. If you have found value in this episode, I am sure you'll find value in what we have coming up. So please subscribe so you will have access and know when we launch the next episode. Also, leave a review. The more reviews we have, the further our reach becomes, and I truly want this to be heard by as many leaders as possible. Don't hog this all for yourself. I would love to hear your insights on this topic, so meet me on social media at Matt Mueller Innovation on LinkedIn and Instagram. And lastly, if you want to learn more about my story and what I can do for you and your company, go to themindfulinnovator.com. I would love to help you innovate on purpose. Until next time, just remember, bring a level of awareness to each conversation, each observation, each moment, and you can create great change in this world. Thank you.